Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Mr. Grande?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Mund?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lowndes?
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Reynolds?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Culverhouse?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Odell?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Olson. Thank you. That is going to close our public hearing section. Thank you very much. And Mr. Satterley?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we have tonight before us a presentation of 750. And just before we start, I've had a number of people ask me, why this is on our agenda when the plan has not been issued yet. And it's a fair question. But about 2 months ago, a gentleman, Mr. Mark Gotts, asked me if he would have the opportunity to come and address this board about his concerns regarding 750. And I said, well, that's fine. But, I would, also like the opportunity for, the 750 folks to come and present. And so the board could at least hear, a balanced presentation on the plan. And then in the intervening time and getting this all set up and getting this on the agenda, in the intervening time, I think the schedule for 750 has become more apparent. And it is now my understanding, and I'll be confirmed by Mr. Bush and Ms. Camblor, that the draft 750 plan should be available to the public sometime in early October. There will then be, I believe, a meeting of the South Florida and a joint meeting of the South Florida Regional Planning Council and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, I believe, in Fort Lauderdale on December 18th, where the draft plan will be discussed in public. And then subsequent to that, there will be here on November 7th, Thursday, November 7th, a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners specifically for a presentation of the 750 plan, a discussion of the 750 plan, and then a full public comment. So when initially I agreed to have this, we did not know any of that information. Tonight I would suggest a format where we allow Mr. Bush and Ms. Camblor, 15, 20 minutes to sort of kind of talk about what 750 is. I believe Ms. Fry would then like to make a brief presentation on their concerns about 750. It then would be the board to have discussion and ask questions and follow up. And then it would be at that point the board's discretion about additional public comment. We don't have a public comment item. This isn't a public hearing. It was a courtesy item, informational mostly. So the board has kind of at its discretion the amount of additional public input you want to have. There's obviously a room full of people. The board could hear 6, 8, 9 people and then ask for a show of hands. But I think that there will be a full vetting of this. Like I said, the plan is not available yet. It will be available soon. I don't think you can make a recommendation to the board one way or the other about the plan, but it is just an opportunity for information. The state did pass recently a law requiring that all boards put a public comment item on their agendas, so we will be coming forward to you probably starting in the October meeting with a public comment section on the agenda. So maybe at the end of this meeting we can briefly discuss some of the parameters that this board would like to see. I know the Board of County Commissioners has a time limit and a common courtesy kind of that they request that people show common courtesy and those sorts of things. This board can certainly adopt those kinds of things as well. With that, I will turn this over to start with Ms. Camblor or Mr. Busha.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, before we go into that, I think we've all been provided with certain documents that we hadn't received before the meeting.
Right.
I just wanted to bring one to your attention. It's titled 750 Summary Update and Review, July 1st, 2013. I don't see any attribution. Is this...
I'm not sure. I didn't see that document. Is that the one that Mike gave you, or? No,
it's. I think there's half a dozen pieces that.
Is that the document you provided, Ms. Fry?
Yes, that's a history to bring you up to speed on what's happened.
Okay. Is there an author or a group or something?
American Coalition for Property Rights.
Thank you. Thank you,
And then also, Mr. Bush had provided a document of which I have a copy that he just brought enough for the board, but we will make additional copies and have them available to anybody that would like them in our office probably tomorrow, won't we, Beverly?
Right.
So with that, I will turn it over to Marcella.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, Mr. Satterley, after we've heard this item this evening, the only action that we would take would be to move it on forward for further analysis by the Board of County Commissioners.
Well, I mean, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Munn, I don't think you have to take any action. I mean, you're certainly to do as the board sees fit, but this is not really an action item. It's an informational item. You know, the plan will be presented to the board in November. You know, again, it was just the history that I provided was that at the time that we agreed to this, you know, some of this stuff just wasn't known to me.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Our meetings have been too short. Brad.
Ms. Campbell.
Did you get
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. Marcella Campbell, Project Director for 750, and with me here today is also Michael Busha, Executive Director with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and Honorable Catherine Hensley, School Board Member for St. Lucie County, and also in the Executive Committee for 750. So we appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on what 750 is, the benefits to all of us within the region, and what has been done to date. And as Mark properly pointed out, we're just almost a couple weeks away from having an actual plan and taking the plan out in the public, or a vision, I guess, to all of you, for all of you to decide what it is that you want to do with it, all of part of it. So that will be your choice ultimately. So 750 stands for 7 counties, the local governments, all the different organizations, public, private, civic, within the boundaries of the 7 counties from Monroe all the way to Indian River County. Together, these 7 counties have a population larger than that of 35 states. Together, we are the 5th largest metropolitan region in the country. We have over 250 miles of beaches, a very unique pattern. We're constrained by the Everglades to the west and the Atlantic Ocean to the east. And while very diverse, these 7 counties do have a lot in common. You know, we share natural resources, we share a transportation system, we share, or our communities sort of cross county lines and boundaries for jobs, for entertainment, for education. So very quickly, just going over 5 points of what 750 is. It is a voluntary process to develop an investment plan for the region. No one was mandated to join 750 or the partnership or participate in this event. And when the vision comes out, it also will be voluntary. It will be non-regulatory. Again, like the many regional plans that were done before, you all have great experience in doing those. You all will decide, like I said at the beginning, what of it is of use or of benefit to the county. You will hear us a lot talk about it being a tool to become more competitive, and I think this is perfect timing, having listened to your staff and the emphasis that you're putting on making sure that the county sort of prepares itself to come out of this recession and prepares itself to, again, become more business-oriented and more competitive. It's a public-led effort to embed local issues in the regional context, and also to look at regional issues and vet them at the local context, or actually resolve them at the local level. For example, just a very recent issue with the Indian River Lagoon. As soon as the counties to the south found out that how important this issue was to the counties to the north, they very quickly showed their support and are ready to work with the counties to the north in whatever it is that is necessary to resolve these issues. a platform to identify, I guess, the best opportunities to work together on regional initiatives that are for the benefit of the greater good. Part of this process, just as an example, Martin County Commissioner Ed Fielding had for several years been trying to work on a broadband, high-speed broadband connection that would be available to all of the local governments and educational facilities for free, and was encountering great roadblocks. And through 750, there's already been great progress made in that arena as well. And I think this one is probably the most important one. 750 is a resource to identify future trends, whether they're related to demographics, to the economy, to market changes, to technology. It's almost like a 30,000-foot look at what's going on in the county, in the region, in the state, in the nation, in the world, things that will likely impact your decisions and essentially allow you to make more informed decisions. Another way that we have described 750 and described this investment plan, if we think about the immensity, the enormity, the grandeur of our 7 counties together, and we think of them as if we were a private corporation. We would be a very impressive private corporation. Just for the 7 counties, as I said before, we're the 5th largest metropolitan area in the country. Excuse me. Just on the local, on the public side alone, the budget for the region is of $40 billion. If you think about it, that is more than the budget for Exxon Corporation. It's more than the budget for the Federal Highway Authority. We have an enormous budget on the public side for our region. And really, as a region, we do not have a unified, a cohesive business plan. And even, from the largest Fortune 500 to the smallest mom and pop, everybody needs a business plan if you want to make cohesive and educated decisions. And I'm going to go back to that 5th sort of description of what 750 is, when we said it's a resource to identify future trends. If you really don't know what is going on around you, it is very hard to make those decisions that will help you better make use of your resources locally. 750 is a lot about identifying trends that affect all of us. In the region, we have a lot of sort of what we call upward trends, or things that are trending up. We know that over the next 50 years, our population is going to increase. Bieber data tells us that increase is going to be from the 6.2 million that we currently have in the region to 9.1 million, over a 50% increase in the next 50 years. And what 750 does is it looks at how do we deal with this increase. It's not about telling people the 6 million that we have here today, this is how you have to change your lifestyle. It's how do we address this growth. It models the differential between the 6 million and the 9 million projected for the next 50 years. Like I said, some of the things that are trending upward, I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but what's known as the 7-county Miami Customs District is the customs district for this area, has always been for the 7 counties from Monroe to Indian River County. Over the last 10 years, it has had an upward growth. It has been very positive, where exports are greater than imports. This is the only region in the nation where exports are higher than imports. Export values are higher than imports. This is very positive for our region, and to understand that and to capitalize on that.
Marcella, can you go
Yes,
back to that
sure.
chart for just a second?
Yes.
Is there some reason Martin County is not on there?
Yes, my brain cells probably not working very well.
okay.
But yes, it's
Okay.
a good eye. Thank you. So for the record, duly noted, I forgot Martin County, and I'm probably going to hear about it tomorrow. But yes,
I will
7
be
counties.
telling Sarah Hurd.
Thank you.
understand that.
Although it was on a good news slide, but air and sea cargo trade are growing, and that's for all of our international airports and for all of our ports combined. One of the important things that 750 has been doing is holding regular meetings with all the ports and airports just to make sure that we're a little more coordinated. And I think locally for St. Lucie County, this is going to be very important to I guess once and for all understand or probably come to a conclusion that is satisfactory to everyone as far as the port of Fort Pierce, to understanding how it fits within the context of the rest of the region. But this is also trade that has been on an upward trend also over the past 10 years. And air has been growing even more so than ports. But overall, it's very high compared to the rest of the nation. This is all something that has helped us understand when we see the trade, when we see how many of the big economic factors in the region are improving, that it's not anymore just about competing with the city that we have to the north or the south, or the county to the north or the south, but that we are strategically positioned to become the gateway to Central and South America and the Caribbean basin, and to start profiting from those emerging markets, as well as from Africa and the Mediterranean and European countries. And so that is also part of an upward trend. When you talk to the ports and the airports, they say, we're doing great, we want more. We need to increase, we need to double. Other sort of good news, what's trending up in the region, Miami International Airport is the first international airport as far as cargo is concerned, in the air cargo in the nation. Together, the region, when we combine our ports, we're the first in home port cruise passengers. We're the third in international visitors in the nation. And this is key because we've all gone through a great recession, everyone in the country. But one of the things that has helped this region from hitting rock bottom has really been tourism. Fifth in air passengers, sixth in waterborne container traffic, eighth in value of exports, even with that increasing trend. And as I said in a previous slide, we are the only region in the nation where export values, things produced here, things that we do here, are higher than import ones. And most of this has to do with small entrepreneurs exporting. This is not mega corporations. It's our little guys. It's the business guys that have these connections with Central and South America and the Caribbean that are really helping our exports go up significantly. And this is going to be even more so of an uptrend with the Panama Canal expanding and the possibilities for some of the ports that do want to accommodate that growth. And for tourism, we are about to hit an all-time record of 100 million tourists. So this is statewide, but we got a very big share within our region. And this is annually. So again, are about to hit that even in the recession that we've been through. Transportation trends are changing. I believe maybe you have had presentations from all aboard Florida. So, private sector funded passenger rail service. The Department of Transportation, for the first time in history, sitting down with the regional transit authority, with the RTA, with the people that operate the trains in our region, and coordinating efforts and figuring out how they can provide a more balanced mobility. Because it's important, if the ports and airports want to increase their exporting capacity, we need to figure out a better way to move goods and people and services. We are increasing diversity, and experts think that this will place us very highly to compete in the ever-changing, fast-changing global economy. And St. Lucie County is actually one of the two counties that is increasing its diversity the fastest within the region. Like I said, a diverse workforce is ranked as something that's viewed very positively when it comes to competing and doing business in a global arena. We are ranked 17th for diversity out of 150 regions. Now, this is all information that has come out of all the modeling of the experts. It's been put together because it is what is driving 750. It is the type of information that, again, at this mega region level, we believe is important that the counties have, and the local governments and the private sector, as they're making decisions, whether it is to approve comprehensive plan changes or to attract businesses to the region. We know that we have different generations that historically had different needs and different desires. The baby boomers and the millennials that together are 2/3 of the current population, who are now looking for very similar things, particularly when it comes to development patterns. And most of our counties and cities are prepared to accept both of these groups of sort of investors and people to live and to, in one case, work, and in another case, probably mostly have fun in our communities. The northern part of the region is the largest producer of citrus in the United States. 80% of the citrus consumed in the United States comes from this part of the region. And so, understanding all of the good things, seeing how we can capitalize on all of these upward trends is what is important and is what we're trying to make available to everyone in the public and private sector. You have all been working very hard to become part of sort of the research and technology clusters, and you can see them mapped here. These are maps the Department of Transportation has put together for this effort that starts to map the research and technology centers that are helping us market the region. Because a lot of this, if we want our economy to grow, if we want to get out of this recession, is not so much about how we see ourselves. It's pretty much or highly dependent on how others see us, how others see our region, how others can make the decision, and what is going to make others to make that decision to come and live or work or invest in our communities. No good news comes without bad news, but this is important too. There are a lot of things in our region that are trending down, and these are the most important ones that we need to understand. And what 750 strives at doing, or will strive at doing, is at identifying tools to address these downward trending the issues and figure out ways on how we can address them, but also on how we capitalize on all the upward upward trending things that we just presented. Now, with increased, former Commissioner Grande will tell you that even though you probably have never found, what did you say, a traffic engineer that was right, I'm sure that you will agree with this, that with the increase in population predicted for the next 50 years, we're going to have more road congestion somehow. But anyways, the models here show to the left of your screen are roadways, and in red it shows that those roadways that are deficient, that are beyond the level of service or the acceptable level of service. And you see quite a bit of red, and then the map to the right shows a lot more red. Our engineers kind of simplified it by telling us that red is bad. Red is roadways that are highly congested. And to say this in different terms, the trends show that if we apply all of our current codes and regulations and comprehensive plans and transportation models as they exist today without changing anything, in 50 years we will have the same exact transportation percentage that we have today, or mobility balance that we have today, which means 98 out of 100 trips that any regular person does have to be done by car. Now, this doesn't mean that anyone is proposing to take cars away. It just means balancing the mobility so that maybe 70 out of every 100 trips are by car as opposed to 98 out of every 100, or whatever you as a local government feel comfortable in trying to achieve in the next 50 years. Issues that are also a downward trend or something that is going to impact development in the economy have to do with sea level rise. Now, granted, this may not be as much as a concern as far as inundation for the counties to the north, but it will be a concern in the sense that sea level rise in the next 50 years will displace about 60,000 jobs and 125,000 people from these areas that you see in the south. The blue on the map to the left shows Inundation, 2 feet predicted over the next 50 years. The red shows, storm surges or special events or, hurricanes or big storms when that 2 foot of sea level rise is in place and the areas that would be affected. Now, the red recedes, the blue doesn't recede. The models for the next 50 years also show that, again, if you don't change anything in your comprehensive plans today, and you apply them as they exist, with all the great policies that many of the counties already have in place, we are, as a region, slated to lose 250 square miles of agriculture, most of which happens in the northern part of the region. What you see here in green is your agricultural areas, and white is developed areas. That's what 50 years applying comprehensive plans and regulations as they exist today. Now, it could be at 1 unit to the acre or 2, but it's agricultural lands that essentially become developed per your current regulations today. Important things to understand also as we're trying all to come out of this recession. This shows the GDP per person. We rank much lower than many regions. We rank lower than Detroit, but most importantly, we rank lower than the average GDP in the United States as a region. The percent of the population 25 and over with less than a high school diploma, as you can see, is pretty high. If the blue line shows the U.S. average, St. Lucie County and Miami-Dade County are the only 2 counties that are above this average. Being above this average is not a good thing. It means you actually have more people than most in the region without a high school diploma. And other counties are pretty close. Education, when we started this process, people were saying, well, education is a targeted industry. Education, the conclusion was, is the basis. If we don't focus on education, if we don't prepare for the next wave of high-tech jobs, and we don't educate our population, it's going to be very hard to really compete and to really have a better region and a better place to live. The percent of the population 25 and over that have at least a 4-year college degree, again, the U.S. average, you can see that only 3 of our counties exceed that average. In that case, St. Lucie County is below the average of all other 7 counties. That's also something pretty important to keep in mind and how that affects many of the decisions that we make here locally. And that, overall has an important impact, because when you look at this chart, the blue line in the bottom shows the educational attainment average for the United States. So the left shows people that have less than a high school degree. Overall, the average in the United States is about 15%. And then all the way to the right, it shows people that have a bachelor's degree or higher. The average for the nation is 28%. As a region, we have same as average people with a bachelor's degree or higher. We have a higher percentage than the national average of people without one. All that means is that the middle, our middle class, is constrained, is shrinking, and it's the key to growth, it's the key to prosperity. That means, too, that we have a great inequality in income, and it also means that, when you look at the growth in jobs, it's that middle section, the middle class, where the jobs have grown the least. And it's that middle class, that middle wage, that really has increased the least over the last decade. And so, again, those are the things, the trends that if we understand them, then we will be better armed with the tools to address them. As I said at the beginning, we're not ready to come up with a full vision for you to review. It will be very shortly. As Mark said, it's the first week, or early in October, and we have a presentation prepared for November 7th for all of you. But the value of 750 to you all, however you want to use it, in whatever capacity you want to use it, is, again, to identify those tools and strategies that will help you address the downward trends. And I only presented a few. The beauty of 750 is you will have trends on every single one of the topics that you need to that can be quantified, but that are also relative to economic development, education, to all the issues that affect your decision making on a day-to-day. I think it's very important that not only we identify those tools and strategies to address the downward turns, but that we identify some that allow us to increase or profit even more from our upward ticks or from our upward trends. And I think I'm almost concluding here, but very important is to identify those regional projects and those regional initiatives that through continued communication we can accomplish, that will be some where we will need the public and private sector possibly to be working together, and that will overall help us become more prosperous as a region. This is a quote from Professor Burchell from Rutgers University. He is part of the 750 team, and say that simply having this conversation has changed the trend. And this is important because simply having had the process, the 750 process over the last 2 years, has accomplished great things for the region. Not only the opportunity to discuss their future jointly, since this, there's for the first time a 7-county unified transportation model. Your TPO can probably talk to you a little more about the importance of having this. There's a unified economic development strategy through the SEDS, through the 2 regional planning councils. You now have an inundation assessment. It's for the 7 counties. It was done by your staff with the collaboration of the Climate Compact. It took you 3 months to do what it took them 4 years to do, thanks to their help. There's a partnership with Southeast Florida's Life Sciences Corridor, which will help sort of further the efforts of your research park and all the entities that you have brought here for biotech and research. The first ever Google-based 7-county expansive data warehouse, a Google-based civic leadership app. I'm not going to get into the details of all this because unless you want to, we can pull them up on the internet, but we will talk about all the details on November 7th. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the first agreement to have that fiber optic sort of high-speed internet run and be installed as the All Aboard Florida improvements are done along the FEC, and that would be available to the schools and public entities for free. And then a website that is about to hit 1 million visitors this week that has, is a repository for all of the information of what's going on within the region. I know I'm probably, Mark, almost out of time, but this conversation, this dialogue that has allowed us to do this has happened, like I said, over the last 2 years. We've had 3 summits, a number of meetings, workshop groups, road shows, a very active website, stakeholder meetings. We've met with many people here in the county and your staffs and your residents. We have had recommendations of what the different work groups decided were important priorities. I'm just going to highlight 2. St. Lucie County, when it came to education, workforce, and economic development, some of the recommendations were to have a unified economic vision, economic diversification, to align the infrastructure improvements with the economic vision. When it came to the environment and natural resources, some of the things we heard from you as a county was, the importance of the issues with the Indian River Lagoon. The health of the lagoon is key to good business in the region. Talked about clean energy and the quality of the environment as an economic driver for this part of the region. The plan and all of these, a lot of this trends and information comes from creating scenarios, a scenario of what we will look like in the future if we continue the course as it is today, if we bend the course and make things a little worse, or if we bend the course and the trends and make them a little bit better. We have quantified all of those scenarios, and looked at the sort of the scorecard, the indicators of what would be better or what would be worse in each of the scenarios. Again, I am not going to dwell on these, but if you're interested in understanding the details of all of the scenarios and how a lot of this information was generated, please just go to the 750 website. That's 750.org, and there's an online modeler. It takes about 5 minutes to do, and you can get all of the information on the different scenarios there as well. As we mentioned, draft report will be in early in October, and the joint Regional Planning Council meeting, which as every single one of our meetings has been in the past, will be broadcast as well, is on October 18th in Dania Beach, the Fishing Hall of Fame, and it will be solely to discuss 750. And then we have a final summit. 4 summits, 3 have already occurred. The final summit for 750 will be on January 15th at the Broward Convention Center, and we hope you all put this date in your calendar. I'm available for questions. I'm sure Mike is also here available for questions, and Catherine in the back as well. So thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make 2 observations. I think this has been a tremendous presentation as far as information content and education. 2 things I would suggest. One, in the middle of your presentation on the transportation, the red lines, I think the concept that we would increase density to the extent that the projections call and not increase reliance on mass transit is totally unrealistic. No place in the world that I know of has that ever occurred. So I think we lose credibility to some extent when we show a much more crowded area with still 98% of the trips as car trips, because I think we all know that that can't happen. The second thing is our unique distinction as the only major region with a positive trade balance.
With exports higher than imports.
Right. I wonder if that may not be due to the fact that we have some unique imports that are not recorded in our district.
I didn't know where you were going, but I should have figured it out.
Just for the guy who's out of step, that's just an observation.
It'll be hard to track those in a trend, but we'll
Let me
try.
see you work that into the report.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dell.
The information that I received about the consortium partners, I take it that's the South Florida Regional Partnership. It said that the consortium partners must implement the plan. Would this mean that St. Lucie County is a partner at this point?
The 7 counties and over 200 public, private, and civic organizations signed a memorandum of understanding back in between end of 2009, beginning of 2010, to jointly compete for a federal grant. Together, because of that commitment to work together, we were one of the top 4 recipients of the first round of grants for these types of efforts. The MOU very clearly states that this is a voluntary process, that you entered into it voluntarily and you can leave at any time, as 2 of the local governments have already done. And it also, doesn't say anything about, anything else. It doesn't commit you essentially to anything else. And as I said, I think on several opportunities, this is, you have done. St. Lucie County has great experience doing regional plans. This is not the first time you've done one. It's not a mandatory or binding plan, and you can, influence your decisions however much you want by it.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that if we did not accept the final plan as approved, are we able to withdraw then?
Oh, yeah.
What you said? Okay. Any penalties for withdrawal?
No.
Okay. And last but not least, from what I'm seeing here from the information that we were given, it seems the plan's very broad in scope and it's comprised of many documents. Is there anywhere that we can identify all the various documents, that comprise this plan?
everything, absolutely everything, is on the 750.org website, including, from every meeting we've had every, every recording is there, every news article. It's grown from, being a website to being a library. So yes, it's all
Last
there.
but not least, two counties have withdrawn, Indian River County and which other county?
Just only Indian River County and the city of Vero Beach, not two
Okay.
counties. There are a number of other local governments and organizations in Indian River County that are still a part of the plan.
Thank you. Mr. Chair. Ms. Kembler, at the one of the early statements you made is you talked about an investment plan. I wonder if you could amplify on that a little bit for me.
Sure. As I mentioned, many different organizations throughout the region are doing fantastic work, but they're doing it for the most part in an isolated manner. There's, except for some rare cases, there's really very little coordination of efforts in many of the arenas, particularly on the public sector side. We parallel it to an investment plan because it is a plan intended to increase economic development, economic opportunity, and economic prosperity in the region. We also are very aware that, with the times that we live in, with the recession that we all went through, federal dollars and dollars to do any sort of project, local dollars, are going to be more and more scarce. And having a clear plan that is coordinated, that is comprehensive, will allow us to better compete for those funds. Now, keep in mind, again, this is also a plan to understand and invest in that infrastructure that is of a regional scale, that if we do it, and we do it properly, it will trickle down and positively affect your local economic efforts. Be it transportation, to make sure that we don't collapse and clog in the future, be it the health of the Indian River Lagoon with the 7 counties standing behind whatever it takes to get that resolved, and then that, of course, having a positive effect in in tourism and the economy of the counties to the north. So the examples are endless.
So the major component there is economic then, and the how is yet to come?
Yes. The how is yet to come. The plan, the work plan, from the get-go, committed to having a 5-year work plan to identify strategies, things that we could do fairly quickly, that local governments could choose to implement fairly quickly in order to achieve sort of that economic development component in the short term. My understanding is that one of the things that we are going to do as soon as the first draft of the plan is out is begin polling the different public and private institutions to understand what those specific short-term investments could be that would allow us this. And then there's the longer-term component, which is the 50-year plan.
Thank you. I hope some of the strategies work faster than 5 years.
Well, we've achieved a few that we weren't anticipating just in the process.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time?
Mr. Chair, yeah, just briefly, the plan, when it comes out, at the early part of your presentation, you indicated, I think, forcefully that everything was voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
So if we had a St. Lucie County comprehensive plan that was in places in conflict with the 750 regional plan, the St. Lucie County comprehensive plan would still be the legal guide for land use?
as it is today, with the other regional planning councils that are, regional plans that are in place, it would be exactly the same thing. You don't have to change anything. There's nothing you need to comply with. And this is why I think we went through the effort of showing you the type of information that is in this plan.
So we need to be
Data-driven
thinking in
plan.
terms of guideline as
Exactly.
opposed to regulation.
Exactly.
Okay, and the other thing is financially, you mentioned SEDS, and we understand that coordinated regional plans are favored, if you will, with the SEDS funding, of course. Would we be in danger of losing federal funding for development or things like that by adopting 750 or not adopting it?
And maybe Mike Busha wants to add on to that, and I'll let him do that before I can tell you that right now, for those communities that have, I mean, there's a significant amount of grant funding that has come to the region for communities simply because they have participated. We have supported their participation. They got 2 instant additional points by being a part of this partnership. But I know that Mike can give you the link to the Department of Economic Opportunity and a better answer from the regional perspective on that.
If anything, I believe it'll be an advantage, just like it's been with the SEDS. A lot of the agencies at the federal government and the state agencies as well, including the Department of Economic Opportunity, who recently finished their long-range statewide economic development plan, are looking to the regions, and they already have looked to the regions for input and help on what they do up there. They can't implement it by themselves. The regional planning councils are advisory. We can't implement the 750. Rubber meets the road at the local level. So what they're looking for are things that can be done locally, where the local governments decide. And frankly, the last 2 regional plans that were done, the only reason why anything got implemented is because one or more local government decided to work together, or just one local government decided, hey, this is a pretty good idea. It can work for our local government. We don't buy everything that's in the last 2 regional plans, and you won't buy everything that's in the 750 plan. But there might be some things in there that you would see as a benefit to the county. There might be some things in there, some trends that you might see that you might take advantage of and change some of your policies. At the end of the day, that is local government's choice. This isn't a plan for HUD. This isn't a plan for the regional planning councils. It will contain just what Marcella said. All the trends that we see out there and all the research suggests that where we're trending and where we're not. You'll see recommendations to address those trends, up or down, to take better advantage of them if they're up, how you can position yourself better as a county with whatever policies, ordinances, land use plans you want to do. And that's it. Those are the things that you're going to, just like the other regional plans, that there are advisory recommendations to you. Take it or leave it. At the end of the day, it's local government's choice on how they operate. We also, part of the plan will also, though, identify some opportunities where local governments can work together, because there are some things, not everything's regional, but there are some things out there that we've already seen that local governments working together can do a lot better at than if they're trying to do it on their own. Instead of the mouse that roared, just like the Indian River Lagoon, nobody's going to listen to Martin County by themselves. You get the 6 counties together, like I guess Commissioner Fielding did, and you get the 3 big counties to the south, the 6 counties meaning Brevard, Volusia, Indian River, Martin, St. Lucie, and Palm Beach. And you get the 3 southern counties, Monroe, Dade, and Broward, involved in getting behind that. And then maybe you got a chance at solving the problem. But those are the ones we're going to point out as advice to the local governments. That's all. And that's it. That's what's going to be in the plan. I can't tell you, make it any more clear. So.
Mr. Martin?
Mr. Busha,
Yep.
the implementation of some of these, whether they're either just the local government or whether it's on a broader scale, 2 counties together or all 6 counties.
Could be the private sector, too.
Will there be funding available to help with the implementation on the local level, whether it's, one government or 6 governments? And if there is funding available, whose dollars will that be?
That'll be up to you. If you decide as a local, and this has been my experience in the long time that we've worked, 38 years we've worked for St. Lucie County. And in all that time, and the other 3 counties as well, and even outside the region we worked, the only way to identify those sources of funds or find money or get the support to spend local dollars on things, the idea has to be good enough, has to be powerful enough to convince, first of all, the local constituency that, look, it's a good enough idea where we could spend some of our tax dollars. Second, if you need help, in other words, if you want some tax dollars coming back to help you do an infrastructure project, I mean, that's our money up there. If you want some of it to come back, you're going to have to convince the state agency or the federal agency that, hey, we're working together regionally on this, and this is a good idea. This is right up your alley. It's consistent with the state's economic development plan. It's consistent with DOT's plan, U.S. DOT's plan to do something good. Then you need to convince them. I mean, it's either a partnership effort with the agencies and returning some of our federal dollars, or it's a purely local effort, or you're working with the public and private sector. We haven't identified what those projects are. In a sense, we will make some suggestions, but that'll be up to the local government because, again, the rubber meets the road there.
So it's not seen as primarily or totally a federally funded series of programs?
No, that'll be your choice. There's nothing in this plan that will require you to apply for, qualify for, or take federal funds. When you get a minute, when you get home, when you get some time, you read over that thing I passed out to you. You won't be able to accept, adopt, or approve the 750 report. Frankly, it's our, we work for the 54 local governments in this region, and South Florida works for the others in Monroe, Dade, and Broward. It's 127 different local governments. Our job, one of our jobs as a regional planning council is to do strategic long-range planning, one of the many jobs. It's not a bad idea to look over the fence, down the road, around the corner, and just to get our heads out of our inboxes once in a while, see what's coming. And that's what the 750 report is about. It's about identifying those opportunities or those challenges that we have, that we see coming, because of the trends and demographics, the market, the technology, and things like that. Give that information to the local governments. They can do with it whatever they'd like to do with it, and also recommend some strategies if they choose to deal with those issues. If they believe that it's going to have an impact on them, then look at the report. There might be some strategies in there, some recommendations in there that you might like, that you might want to use. And then after that, if it requires funding, that, frankly, is a local initiative, or a partnership between the public and private sector, or a regional partnership between local governments. You got to make a decision on what you want to do, how much money you need to implement what it is you want. It's no different than what you do today, with the taxpayers' money. This won't obligate you to apply for, or do anything else with federal dollars, state dollars, or your local dollars. You have to decide what's important in this plan. And if anything, for you, as a county, as a city of Fort Pierce, your choice. I mean, that's the way it's been. That's the way this plan is. That's the way the last 2 regional plans were. I know St. Lucie County and Fort Pierce and others took a lot of neat things out of the old regional plan, used it, implemented it locally, because it made sense to them. And that's the only way regional plans get implemented, in this state anyways. That's the only way.
Right.
So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bush, if the agricultural community for Dade County is basically Homestead and the Redlands, what is left of it?
Yes, sir.
If an entrepreneurial company wanted to go to Homestead, Florida City, and put in some innovative agricultural crops, God bless them.
Yes, sir.
Would they then have to go through the regional planning council to do that?
Lord.
Being the council says, no, that area is going to be developed and we're going to do away with agriculture in that area?
Lord, no. That decision is made in Miami-Dade County, in a commission chambers just like this. And frankly, if right now the land use and zoning out there, most of it is agriculture. There's an underlying zoning of either 5, 10, or 20 out there. We know that area pretty well. We've done some work there. In fact, we got the farmers together from that area, the Redlands out there, western Dade County, the farmers from Palm Beach. There's not much left in Broward. I don't think, no, there weren't any farmers from Broward.
Legal crops.
It's an export. But no, from Indian River, St. Lucie, I mean, Doug Vernique's been a big help to us gathering up all the farm. We had a huge meeting of those during our third summit just to find out what the future of agriculture is, and we'll understand the challenges. And is there anything we can do, including getting out of the way as government, to make agriculture stay here? Because it's a huge traditional industry that brings billions of dollars to the economy. So my answer to you, sorry this is a long answer, look, if some farmer wants to go out there and do something innovative, look, they don't have to ask the regional planning council down there. They frankly don't even have to ask the local government. They have the land use and zoning for that now. Now, if for whatever reason, you know, the owner wants to change his land use, he's got to come before a board like this and do what they have to do now. This isn't, look, this document is not self-executing. It is not self-executing. It is advisory recommendations about trends and strategies that, again, if you see some value in it, like the water farming issue, that's a huge issue. That was brought up during the 750, and people knew about it before. You guys know what water farming is? I'm sure. It's the farmers wanting to lease their land for storage because we have an emergency. It made sense even before we had an emergency to do that. We talked to the district last week. They've worked out, I think they executed their first lease in Martin County with Calkins. The big issue there was how do we figure out if we flood the property and we make wetlands, is the EPA going to come down here and say we can't farm again, you know, after the emergency's over and we figure out a better plumbing system?
The cost of money to replenish that land back to standards would be prohibitive.
Yeah, and the district isn't making anybody do anything. This is a voluntary program. They've had several farmers volunteer. They finally worked out the lease with the help of the 750 staff to go up to Washington to say, hey, look, NDEP at the state, hey, look, if we flood this guy's land, this farmer's land, what happens when he wants to farm it again? And what they agreed to, and this was the big sticking point, is, look, they're going to look at existing conditions that are there today. What wetlands are on that farm today? If you make any more as a result of the flooding, too bad. It reverts back to existing conditions. You had what you had. That was huge. To sort of get this dispersed water management thing going. I mean, we don't have to buy all this land to store the water. I mean, you can lease it. You can pay the farmers for the service, you know, of storing the water.
Water fur in a grove doesn't make a wetland.
No, exactly. And so in order to work this all out, I mean, in a sense, that's a little bit of economic development, a little boost to the farmers who don't have another option. They can farm water, you know, make money at it because they're getting paid. I don't know what the lease rate is. I have to check that. I don't know what the district is paying for the lease of the farmland. You know, maybe Billy knows, to store the water. But there's a lot of farmers interested in the program, which is a good thing for now. And when they don't want to do it anymore, I think the leases are short-term, 5-year leases. And so the land reverts back to ag. You know, all bets are off, no wetlands. Even if you created them, they're not, you don't have to keep them. That was the only way to do it, the only fair way to do it.
Thank you.
So that's, sorry, long answer, but, you know, I'm just, all right.
Mr. Chairman, if we might, maybe we move on and let the people that, you know, the other side of the coin come up and make their presentation. I believe Ms. Fry, were you wanting to present?
Actually,
Thank you.
we had asked Commissioner Solari to make the long presentation.
Didn't hear.
Good evening. I'm Bob Solari from 730 Painted Bunting Lane in Vero Beach, Florida. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, and would like to say a a few things before beginning my comments on 750. One, I'd like to thank you all for all the work that you do in your community. As a county commissioner, I understand the importance of having an active and engaged board discussing things before it gets before the commission. And personally, the Planning and Zoning Board is even more meaningful to me. I was on the Vero Beach Planning and Zoning Board from 1988 to 1992. As a matter of fact, Mark Sadley was in the planning department at that time. And it was when I was there that I got a lot more interested in the community as a whole, and that actually pretty much led directly to my decision to try to run for public office. I had to delay that decision for a few years because my wife didn't like the idea. She suddenly changed her mind one day, and I ran for office. I'd also like to make clear from the start that I am not here to tell you or suggest to you anything about the future of St. Lucie County. You all understand St. Lucie County a lot better than I ever will. I'm here simply to talk a little bit about 750, to give a different view of 750, and to try to explain why the Board of County Commissioners in 750 finally withdrew from that process. I'd like to give a little background, a little bit different.
You mean the Board of County Commissioners in Indian River County?
We've withdrawn, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. I'd like to give a little background on what was initially the Sustainable Communities Initiative. This was not a bottom-up process. This was a top-down process. Congress authorized $150 million for planning purposes and directed the U.S. Department of Transportation, U.S. Department of Urban Development and Housing, in conjunction with the EPA, to disperse this throughout the country in the form of regional grants. 2 Florida planning councils, the South Florida Regional Planning Council and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, of which Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin County, and Palm Beach are members, joined together to form the Southeast Regional Planning Partnership, and they received $4.25 million for planning purposes. This might sound benign, but a close reading of 750's foundation document, the Regional Vision and Blueprint for Economic Prosperity, shows that this is an aggressively progressive document incompatible with the core values of the majority of citizens in Indian River County, and it will certainly lead to a significant loss of local control, particularly in the areas of planning and development. So again, please note, this planning process originated in Washington, D.C. to further the goals of Washington bureaucracies. It was not something that was started because of some specific local need or a response to a local problem. The federal government dangled money and local bureaucracies grasped for it. The local bureaucracies then put together an inviting proposal and invited participation of many local governments and private sector groups. The proposal that came to and was initially accepted by Indian River County promised an easy flow of federal dollars as the enticement to join. In the city of Vero Beach, which has since withdrawn from 750, the item was originally passed on a consent agenda with no discussion or review. So why did Indian River County leave 750? Again, a reading of the Regional Vision and Blueprint for Economic Prosperity, the foundation document, clearly shows that its deeply held values are in conflict with the deeply held core values of the majority of citizens in Indian River County. And it's clear that in Indian River County, for instance, we favor limited government, and while the 750 group is being pushed by HUD and the EPA, which are part of an unelected, entrenched bureaucracy in Washington, which is supportive of a much larger and larger bureaucracy, and is being now driven by a new bureaucracy in Southeast Florida, the Southeast Florida Regional Partnership, which never tires as boasting, as was mentioned tonight, that it has over 200 members, and it continually seeks to get new members. In Indian River County, very importantly, we believe in local decision-making. 750 will lead to control from Washington, and that is actually the focal point of this argument. You can believe, as Mr. Bush states, that local control will stay locally, or we can view what's already happening in other areas of the country and realize that this could be the path to losing local control. Later in the discussion, I'm going to talk a little bit about Westchester County, New York, where HUD has already invaded that county to try to strip it of a lot of local planning and zoning ability. In the Indian River County, we believe in property rights. The implementation will see these property rights, or some of these property rights, wither away. The actions of EPA and HUD stripping away property rights in other areas of the country indicates what soon might be happening here. And in Indian River County, we believe in representative democracy. 750 promotes special interest democracy controlled not by elected officials, but by unelected, generally unknown bureaucracies. And in Indian River County, we believe in fiscal responsibility. 750 reinforces more spending by the federal government, which has already imposed an unfunded liability of over $1 million on every American taxpayer. So I ask that if you have $150 million of more planning, where are you going to get the billions of dollars to implement those plans when the federal government is already broke? Basically, all that money in the next few years is going to come from local taxpayers, from the people sitting in this room. It's not going to be a continual flow from Washington. Now, I believe there are a multitude of additional reasons for leaving 750, but tonight I'd like to focus on just 3 more: the process, the planners, and corruption. The process. In Indian River County, what really galvanized the citizens to rise up against 750 and to tell the Board of County Commissioners they didn't want it was the work group roadshow that the 750 group presented on October 25th of 2012 to the residents of Indian River County. This began with an agenda that contained no substance, nothing that would indicate to any of the citizens of Indian River County that anything important was happening. It continued with a 3-hour roadshow which had no meaningful discussion about either the possible contents of the proposed plan or what we in Indian River County would find acceptable in such a plan. The lack of meaningful discussion has continued. I'm a member of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. We had 750 on our agenda at our March 15th, 2013 meeting. We were given a 45-minute presentation by the planning consultant, Victor Dover. His talk was basically an argument for planning to a group that's been dealing with planning for years and years. His talk had almost nothing substantive about the 750 process. He did talk about a 1733 Savannah plan and a 1928 regional plan for New York. He did, as he has in the past, applaud Burnham, who said, "Make no little plans." But there was nothing substantive about 750, which, by the time he spoke, had already been 2 years in the making. At our May 17th meeting, Mr. Andre Duwani, the principal of one of the 2 leading design firms for 750, spoke, and he said, "I have 5 or 6 anecdotes to discuss." At this point, I wanted to hear about the plan and not about some anecdotes. He went on to say, "The plan will transcend the local." He very clearly said that. The plan has to transcend the local. He talked about mega regions of famous universities, huge universities. He said, in 50 years, we need to work at the mega region. Lost were localities. Lost were the neighborhoods that you and I and other members of planning and zoning boards throughout the Treasure Coast both know and cherish. His only developed idea was this sense of the big, the huge, the mega. He said almost nothing about the 750 plan itself. Quite simply, the process so far has not addressed the deeply held core values of Indian River County and, in fact, has said very little substantive about the plan itself. The planners, to me, one of the most troublesome things to come up is the planners do not even see the possibility, and Mr. Bush has made that pretty clear tonight, don't even see the possibility that there's a chance that the coercive power of the state will ever be used against the citizens of Indian River County or St. Lucie County or Martin County. I gave them at the work group roadshow, Mr. Busha and Mr. Dover at one of the tables when they broke out into work sessions, a number of examples where this has already happened. But basically they denied the possibility that it would happen in the future. But it already has happened. We have seatbelt laws, water use laws, fertilizer ordinances, increasingly expensive land development ordinances and building codes, the recent transient rental preemption by the state of Florida for localities. Both the state of Florida and the federal government continually use their coercive power to shape our behavior, and this is not suddenly going to stop. In his reply to my letter of November 30th, Mr. Busha stated in his December 12th reply, which is in your packet, almost everything I'm basically saying tonight is backed up in the packets I handed out. His statement was, participating in the 750 planning effort, implementing the resulting regional plan, changing local plans, zoning, capital spending, and requesting accepting federal assistance will be, as always, strictly voluntary, the sovereign right of a local government. My response to this is if someone does not even acknowledge the possibility of a problem, how are they going to plan for it? As one example of how the process will not be voluntary, I'd like to discuss what has been happening over the last few years in Westchester County. HUD has made no secret about the fact that it intends to remake every community in America. Westchester County, New York, was the 4th most diverse county in New York State. No patterns of discrimination were shown in county housing. Westchester County and every municipality in it were nonetheless required to rewrite their housing codes at great local cost. As Rob Sims, a deputy director of HUD, has said, we're clearly messaging across the country that there has been a significant change in the Department of Housing and Development, and we're going to ask them to pursue similar goals as well. So HUD has said they're coming, and they will come. So HUD will remake your housing codes, and how? HUD will do it through things, regional plans like 750. Take a look at the Southeast Florida Regional Vision and Blueprint for Economic Prosperity Action Plan. Your packet has Task 2.5, Regional Housing Assessment. This requires very specific housing information, the exact information that HUD will use to force us on the Treasure Coast to rewrite our housing codes to HUD specifications. Housing decisions will be out of local hands, our hands, and put in the hands of unelected bureaucrats in Washington. They will force us to rewrite our housing codes to meet their ideological goals, not our local goals and aspirations. As Westchester County's executive, Mr. Robert P. Astorino, wrote in a recent Wall Street Journal guest column, quote, "But HUD won't budge. Its vision for remaking neighborhoods depends on gaining control of local zoning." HUD's path to local control is through the 750 process. On the bright side, I suppose, once HUD does get control, you guys won't be needed so much, so you'll have a lot more free time. Corruption. The best definition of corruption that I know of is the private use of public goods. At a March 16, 2012, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting, Ramon Trias, a member of the council board, said that the project has spent $700,000 with no results so far. A comment made at the meeting earlier that morning was, they have squandered most of $1 million. Mr. Busha said that the South Florida Regional Planning Council had spent a large sum and had no deliverables. My understanding is that the first $700,000 to $1 million, and that spending was actually, I want to make clear, controlled by the South Florida Regional Planning Council at that time, and not by Mr. Bush in the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. But that money, the first almost $1 million, was simply used to pay the salaries of members of the South Florida Regional Planning Council. That is, to maintain that overstaffed bureaucracy. And it was not to do the work that was called for by the grant. This, in my view, is a great example of the private use of public goods, corruption. I wrote to Mr. Busha to see if my understanding was consistent with his. Reading from his reply, I concur. Your letter accurately captures the mood and concerns of the Executive Committee and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council during the 6 months prior to March 30th, 2012. I concur. But Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council's response was not to fight this blatant corruption. It was to take over management of the grant. I take this to be yet another example of bureaucracy's broken moral compass. Now, the size of the federal debt has reached immoral proportions. This type of corruption adds just another drop to it, but it is wrong. And the corruption doesn't start here, in my view. It starts in Washington. It begins with a HUD that forces its ideology on us in ways not authorized by law. It continues in that other great unelected bureaucracy, the EPA. Now, a lot of people have called people who are against, there's a press journal article about 750 people that was prefaced by people wearing tin hats. People at meetings have basically said, we don't want planning, or the people against 750 don't want. This is not true. We understand the need for plans. We actually, most of us don't wear tin hats, but There are also people who don't agree that people like the EPA are on the up and up. And on September 9th, 2013, the United States Environment and Public Works Committee report was brought out. This was a United States Senate minority report. In it, it discussed the recent EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson's Environmental Protection Agency and its reckless disregard of the Freedom of Information Act. The EPA, when responding to public information requests under the Freedom of Information Act, delayed, hampered, and withheld information. According to the report, it purposely hides information from the public to protect the agency's allies and radical agenda. It hid communications under false email names. And worse, it regularly waived the fees of its allies, as the report states, quote, "This clear abuse of discretion suggests that EPA's action may be part of a broader scheme to advance the agency's political agenda." And please keep in mind, the EPA, like many federal agencies today, now has its own armed police force. And as a recent EPA police action in Alaska shows, they are not afraid to use it. And again, note that the HUD in 2012 had a budget of almost $66 billion and over 9,000 employees. The EPA in 2012 had a budget of $8.3 billion with over 17,000 employees. Westchester County shows, and wisdom suggests, that the smart thing would be to never let them in, as opposed to try to remove them once they are entrenched in your community. I'd like to make one other thing clear. And again, this is my viewpoint. I understand there are two sides to most stories. But after being part of this process for the last 2 years, it's important to note, at least the way I see it, that 750 and the regional planning process is not about planning, and it's not about prosperity. It's about ideology and imposing that ideology on different people along the Treasure Coast. It is about unelected bureaucracies in Washington stripping planning and zoning boards, municipalities, and counties of their local powers and their ability to develop communities according to the deeply held values of their residents, their friends, and their neighbors, and imposing their ideology on people they have never met and in communities they have never visited. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Dell.
Mr. Solari, you have a commission government like we do. After the presentation you've given us, how could this progressive plan work in our commission government?
Well, it works similar to the way different bureaucracies have already worked in the state of Florida. People often go after money. When the South Florida Water Management District, when the St. John's Water Management District wanted to change our behavior and institute water conservation ordinances, they had a little box on their grant applications. Is your water conservation ordinance in place? If you could not check that box, you could not get a grant. The South Florida Department of Environmental Protection Office now has a box or a line that asks, is your fertilizer ordinance in place? And if it's not, then they won't renew the consumptive use permit. So
So it waters down our powers, basically.
Well, what it means is all the monies that we've gone to the state of Florida in this case, and later that it's gone to Washington, if we want to get some of that back, we won't be able to. And that's my understanding of how it's going to work. Westchester County has found that. There's a recent locale, I couldn't remember it thinking about it, but the U.S. Department of Transportation is withholding some millions of dollars from another government until they redo their plan according to the U.S. Department of Transportation's will. HUD is holding something like $17 million away from Westchester until it does its next step. Westchester has a court suit against HUD right now. And initially, the first court threw Westchester County out because evidently some section of HUD says you can't take us to court. So they're going to a higher court to see if that'll stand. But again, it's clear that there's a regional process in the San Francisco Bay Area. And, looking a little bit on the internet, it shows that there are counties there who have withdrawn from parts of that process because they're being made to do certain things they don't want to. And again, keep in mind, this was not anything that was started from the bottom up because of a need. It was started from Washington bureaucracies, and it's clear, I could have brought a lot more examples, but I didn't want to spend 2 hours in front of you. I think, well, you've got a chairman who looks like he should be in bed now, so.
Again, I apologize.
No, that's
trying to hang in there.
That's all right. But, these are not benign organizations. And the first 2 or 3 or 4 years, they may go well. Yeah. But they're going to, all things being equal, require more and more changes if you want to get any of your dollars back. I mean, the example of the fiber optics was an example. At the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, one of the first times Commissioner Field brought it up, he wanted to make that request in a very aggressive way. I was able to tone it down some. I mean, here was a private sector company coming to do something that Amtrak, or similar to what Amtrak was going to do at a tremendous cost to the taxpayers, and all aboard with Florida was going to do it for maybe a small cost to the taxpayers. And now someone on the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council wanted to exact something else from that process. We had another commissioner from my county who wanted to see, well, can't we get more stops along the way? My feeling for that was, these gentlemen from the private sector have done their business plan. If they could have made some money by making more stops, they would have, but they couldn't. But when you have more and more little bureaucracies in the way, it makes the process more and more difficult. And you have more and more people there that say, maybe I can get something for my community out of this, or maybe I can get something for myself out of that. And these things happen. I mean, St. Lucie County may be different, but in every community I've been to, there is corruption. I mean, it may not be great and overwhelming, but corruption is always everywhere. And if you're not specifically on guard for it, you're going to be part of it. And it can be little things like a free lunch or a little exaction from somebody else during the process. But in my view, it's simply not right.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, sorry if I could, what was the regulations that were imposed on Westchester County by HUD? You said there was no record of discrimination.
Yes.
And you mentioned discrimination. So what was the evil that HUD was after?
The HUD evidently wanted them to rewrite all of their municipal housing laws in its image. I can get you some of I didn't put the draft changes in that package, but they wanted to be able to allow almost every income strata to be in almost every neighborhood.
So in other words?
Well, it significantly changed any neighborhood in any community, basically.
Sounds like equal protection to me.
Well, it doesn't sound like equal protection.
It does to me.
Okay.
But we disagree. But let me ask you this now. I've litigated against the EPA and governmental agencies. I've also served in government and administrative capacities, aides and local, state, and Washington. And I'm not real fond of the EPA, but the fish tastes a lot better in St. Lucie County after the EPA made the city everybody stop dumping their sewage out in the river. And so sometimes we need that regulation, and the Clean Water Act and such as that. Sometimes we need that regulation when the counties and the states can't do it.
Oh, I haven't said that there shouldn't be an EPA, that there shouldn't be a HUD, but they should measure their actions based on what Congress has authorized them to do. Recently, they stopped, or what they said was to a potential mining project, again, I believe in Alaska, that we're not giving you a permit, period. This was before the application came to them. I mean, and this was evidently a private company that had spent a significant amount of money developing a process, but before it came before them, they said, we're never going to permit this, so don't bother. Now, that is not the right way to do things.
Mr. Chairman, my problem is I don't really see the correlation between your address and the 750 project.
Well, part of it is simply whether or not you believe that this will be, at the end, a totally voluntary process, or whether you believe that this is how some Washington agencies will come in here to tell us how to change our local laws. If you believe that these agencies are purely benign, then you probably don't think there's a problem. I do not believe these agencies are purely benign based on their record in places like the Bay region, in Westchester County, and in a number of other examples. So I don't believe they're benign. I believe that they will try to, over time, force their ideology on us. And they may do it simply by withholding money or saying that they'll withhold money. But these changes seem to be happening too often throughout the country today. And these things, in my view, are often extra-legal. They are things that Congress never authorized. That statement that I read from the HUD deputy director, saying that we're changing our way at HUD and we want to send a message to the communities across the country. That's not a benign statement. That's an expression of how they're going to impose their will on communities across America. EPA has done that too. EPA, not too long ago, said that excessive rainwater is pollution, and it was tried to force the state of Virginia to make up to $300 million worth of extra plumbing changes. Virginia went to court, and the court found that EPA had no authority to just call excessive rain pollution.
So the courts are working.
Well, I understand. But again, I don't want to have to, in Indian River County, continually go to court to protect the citizens of Indian River County. When we have a budget of $252 million, and I don't want to fight somebody with a budget of $66 billion or $8.3 billion. Matter of fact, I really don't like the idea of fighting any other governmental units. I mean, I'd rather, live in peace with all of them. And, I think that basically Indian River County has managed to live in peace with Brevard County, with St. Lucie County, with most of the counties around us. And I'm happy to let us guide and rule our future without more guidance from a mega region committee, and particularly one that's backed up by the U.S. Department of Transportation, the EPA, and HUD. And again, I'm perfectly willing to grant that your view on these things is going to depend on certain beliefs and core values. And that's why I prefaced my remarks by saying this is why we in Indian River County removed ourselves from 750. Because I didn't even say that 750's core values were wrong. I simply said they're in conflict with the core values of Indian River County, which they are. And again, it wasn't the county commissioners who stood up really initially and said this. It was a large body of Indian River counties, galvanized particularly by the October 25th work group roadshow, when they got a view of how manipulative the process was, that stood up and filled the county chambers saying, you need to leave that group. And in a 4-to-1 vote that day, we did.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure, sir.
All right. Again, this is going to go in front. This won't come in front of us again, correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the only way that anything out of 750 would come before this board, if the Board of County Commissioners were to choose to implement certain provisions of 750 that would require amendments to our comp plan or land development code, and then it would go through the full public hearing process. And that would be the way that something like that would come before you again.
All right. Does the board have any other questions at this time, or what would the board's pleasure be to do from here?
Adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I would thank both groups for coming, but I don't think any action is required of us.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I apologize about the breathing and trying to keep it quiet. Thank y'all both for coming and your presentations. We'll continue on now with our part and go on with other business.
Mr. Chairman, the only other item, that I would, request maybe we discuss, or maybe you would like that we come back to you with some recommendations on, if we place a public comment item on the agenda, what would the parameters be that the board would like to see included, time limits on, presentations, because, what that public comment will be an opportunity for people to come and address this board, presumably outside of the issues that are on the agenda. Typically might be, broader planning issues in the county or something they want this board to consider, because, typically items that are on our agenda have a particular applicant, it's a public hearing, and then the people are allowed to speak during that item. Different than the county commission, where they deal with such a broad range of issues. We tend to deal with planning and zoning issues. So, if you wanted to set some parameters about the public comment, that would certainly be an idea. So I guess what I would ask you guys either to think about tonight or discuss, or ask us to come back with some recommendations to you, because it will be coming up on subsequent agendas.
Any questions on that, or?
Yeah, I would suggest that I think what we would need to think about is there any reason why our future public comment portion of the meeting should be different than the county commissions? The easiest road for us to take would be to have public comment modeled after and regulated in the same fashion as the county commission, and then, as rules change at the commission level, it would be automatic for us. It would be pretty easy to handle. But I think what we really need to think about is there any reason why ours should be different?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mott?
I would tend to agree with Mr. Grande's analysis of the situation. I would think, for consistency's sake, and the other boards, Mr. Satterley, our Board of Adjustment and other committees going to have to adopt a comment from the public section?
The Assistant County Attorney is at my left shaking her head, so I'm presuming that means yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Munt, all the committees will be adopting it for their October meetings. Staff will include a public comment section on the agenda, and I think the suggestion that you follow the board's procedure, unless you all want to do something else, is certainly a sound one. If you find that's not what
unless the Board of County Commissioners came down with every committee could and every board could set their own ground rules. I would think that maintaining the same standards as the Board of County Commissioners sets a good example.
I have to agree.
I would also suggest that since it's a kind of an open-ended thing, if we initially adopted the standard for the county commission meetings and found that it didn't work for us for whatever reason, we could always change. So I think it's fairly safe to do that.
Right. And it depends a lot on how the chair runs the meetings, too.
All right, we're done. Let's go. Move.
Boy,
Go. Let's move on with this now. Go.
All right, well, you will see it on your October agenda, and we will put it on, and maybe we can just outline the board's procedures, and we can attach that to the agenda, the Board of County Commissioners' procedures for public comment, and attach that to the agenda.
All right. Any other business? Motion to adjourn. All right. Thank you all very much. Staff, thank you for everything. I'm going home.